Hello, everyone. Hi, good evening. We started a little bit later today, so thank you for joining me. I'm hardwired tonight, so we should have a good connection. Thank you for joining me. So the way this is going to go tonight for the people that are here for the first time, I'm going to go over some things that kind of go with the topic of the video for tonight is building wealth in 2024. So I'm going to go over that. Shouldn't take long, maybe about 5 minutes. And then I'll take your questions. Your questions can be on the topic or it can be on just general real estate. But go ahead and put your questions in now because I generally start at the top and then I work my way down, trying to give as much preference to the people that arrived early. So it's really important to arrive early. You can always super chat me, and that's as well. Also, I want to say that I've updated my first time homebuyer masterclass and confidently closed handbook. If you are in the market for a home, you need this class. It is very important that you are knowledgeable and don't trust your agent completely, right? You don't want to just give all of your power to them to say, okay, just do everything for me without knowing what you should know on your own. That goes for lenders, inspectors, all of that. So I've made the masterclass based on my 20 years of experience. I've been licensed 20 years this month. I was licensed 20 years in October. It's November. So I was licensed 20 years in October. Plus, over the last, since 2019, since I've had this channel, working with first-time home buyers, doing my lives, answering your questions, I've put all of those things in there. So you can be a confident first-time home buyer. So that link is in the description. So thank you for joining me. Good evening, everyone. I did a video about creating wealth in 12 months. And it's not that you're going to be necessarily wealthy, right, in 12 months, but you're going to be setting up the pillars that you need. Like you're setting your foundation for wealth, right? And so these are the 12 things that you should have. You should have a plan for, you should be focused on and moving toward. And if you take one of them, so you're not overwhelmed, every month, and this is in no particular order because you're all on maybe different financial journeys, you should be focused on one of these 4 things once a month. So by the end of the 12 months, by the end of 2024, you have a firm foundation and then you just continue to build on that foundation. So I'm going to go over them really quickly. Then I'm going to take your questions. Okay, so one is credit. So you have to work on your credit from wherever it is now. Your goal should be to get your credit score 740 or higher. And I put 740 because talking to all financial professionals, for the most part, once you get above a 740, you are given pretty much the best interest rates. Some people may say 760, you always can go higher, but for the most part, talking to lenders, everybody else, are like 740 and above is pretty much getting the best rates. So I said, make that your goal. So if you're at a 620, how can I get to a 700? How can I get to 740? But that should be your goal. And you put that plan in place. Of course, I have a video about how to, get perfect credit. So I would watch that. Make sure number 2 is budgeting. You need to take a month and make sure you're on a budget. And, you don't have to recreate the budget every month, but you may have to just tweak it every month. But take 1 month and do a basic budget for your household. In my Facebook group, I have budget videos because we did our spending freeze in October. So those budget videos are still on my in my Facebook group. You should watch those. Number 3 is buy a house. Not everybody's going to be ready right now in 2024 to buy a house. But one of the things you can do is get pre-approved to see where you stand and then set a plan for when you're going to be able to buy a house. And then if you already have a house, start looking at some, what does it take for you to get an investment property? Be working on that. Life insurance. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but pretty much if you get 10 times your income, you should be fine because you are trying to leave behind to your heirs something that if they were depending on your income, now they have income to cover what they lost by you passing away. So if you're making $50,000 a year, you want a $500,000 life insurance policy. They can invest that and make pretty much your salary off of that investment. So, and just get a term policy. It shouldn't be that complicated. A term policy is going to be the least expensive policy you can get. It's not an investment, right? Because a lot of people, when they're selling whole life policies, life insurance, they're mixing investments with your life insurance, which you should separate the two. So just get a basic term policy. If you're generally pretty healthy, then it's not going to cost you much every month. For example, I think when we first got the life insurance, it was maybe like 200, 250 a year, not a month, a year. So, and that was for like either 700,000, a million. Like it was, as long as you're healthy. My husband's policy was more than my policy because Black men generally they have higher mortality rates, right? So it really depends on your health and a lot of different things, but it's not very expensive. All right, so let's go savings, 3 to 6 months. So 3 to 6 months of savings, you have to start building that. So if you don't have anything yet, say, okay, I'm going to save $50 a month. I'm going to save $75 a month until I get that savings of 3 to 6 months of expenses. But when you do your budget, you're able to see how much you can put aside for that. Number 6, estate planning and estate planning. Either you need a will or a trust. I have videos in my lives about both of those, so I'm not going to go over it there, but part of your wealth planning, your wealth building is making sure you have those in place. Number 7, getting out of debt. Got to have a plan. You have to know how much debt you have and what's your plan to get out of debt. Either you're going to use the snowball method, meaning taking the smallest debt to the largest debt, or you're going to use the highest interest rate. So pay off the debts with the highest interest rates. It's not super complicated, you guys. Those are pretty much the strategies of getting out of debt. And then retirement accounts. You want to have a retirement account, either a Roth IRA, 401k, 403b, or a combination, something that you're saving toward retirement. Number 9, increasing your income. So I advise everybody to start a small business really quickly. When I was teaching, because I used to be a teacher before I got on YouTube, I had my real estate license. And so I would do that. That's how I was making extra income. And then I was selling things on Etsy while I was at school, selling some like Etsy school organizers, that sort of thing. And then I started YouTube, and then I tried to transition to YouTube. You should always have something that you're working on outside of your primary employment. It can have something to do with your primary employment, but especially in this economy, you need something that you're building your income with. And then investing, and I have a full video on this. I just wanted to kind of go over it with you guys tonight. And if you have any questions about any of these 4, just put it in the chat and I'll answer those. All right. And then my moderator is putting in those videos that go with that. And then investing in general. So if you've maxed out your retirement accounts, because most retirement accounts have a cap. So if you've maxed out your retirement accounts, you've maxed out, those things, your savings, your save, and you still have extra money, then you would think about, okay, should I be investing in other ways? That could be real estate, should be investing 529s for your kids' college education, other, index funds, mutual funds, that sort of thing outside of your retirement accounts. You can work on those things. Like I said, additional real estate investing you can do with your extra money as well. And then 11 is taxes, reducing your tax liability. You want to be paying the least amount of taxes as possible. So when you file your taxes for 2023 and 2024, you should make another appointment with your tax professional and see, okay, I paid this amount of taxes in 2023. What can I do to make sure my tax liability is lowered in 2024? And that's a conversation. They can give you some tips. Maybe you should be doing some things differently. Maybe that small business, writing off some of those expenses, that sort of thing you can do. And then lastly, fun with money. What are some fun things you want to save toward? How much giving do you want to do? How much, what did you give last year? Do you want to increase that? How do you want to give? So this is my 12-month plan, because I know everybody may not be ready to buy a house, but if you have these 12 things, you're creating the foundation, right, to build wealth for you and your family. So now I'll take your questions. Let me put that down. If you have questions about any of these 12, let me know. But you'll see more videos on my channel in 2024 regarding these, because a lot of times, I'm so focused on, how to buy a house, what you need to do, that some of those other financial things are not in place for a lot of people. All right. So good evening, everyone. Put your questions in the comments. It could be with building wealth. It could be with it could be about real estate. So we're going to do it all tonight. We're at about 112 joining. Thank you guys for coming. All right, here's our first question. Let me see the people that were here. I think Ruth was here first. Good evening. And Tiru, good evening to you as well. All right, so let's see. Hello, intercessory. I hope I'm saying that right. Life. Hello, bought a home in 2021 for $416,000. Currently owe $386,000. Okay. Requested PMI removal. BPO appraisal came back at $495,000, but lender said 20% equity is based on purchase price, not what is owed. Is that right? This is a good question. Typically, it is not based on the purchase price. Based on, let me try to say it. Typically, once you have 20% equity with a lender, they get rid of your PMI. And that's if you have a conventional loan. So I've talked about this on my channel before. Sometimes they make you wait 2 years. It really depends on your lender, but typically, if there are any lenders in the chat, let me know. You can add to this. But typically, in order to get your PMI removed from a conventional loan, once you reach 20% equity in that house, and that equity can be achieved by your property increasing in value, you are able to get rid of your PMI. I have several clients who bought in 2020 and they got rid of their PMI in 2022, or they got rid of their PMI that bought in 2021, got rid of their PMI in 2023 this year. So they are getting rid of their PMI, but it's not because they paid down their mortgage 20%. It was because their home went up in value more than 20%. So, and I'm looking at this, if the lender sent the appraiser out, then they would have already known that, right? Based on the purchase price and not what is owed. So I don't know. I can't do that math really quickly. But what is their 20%? Because you say you owe $386. The appraisal is appraising at $495. It looks like you have 20% equity in that house. So yeah, it could be specific to your lender. And this is something that I will copy and ask some lenders. But even when I got rid of my PMI on my conventional loan, it wasn't based on the purchase price. It was always based on the loan amount and how much the home was worth. It shouldn't be based on the appraisal. It should not be based on the purchase price. It should be based on how much you owe them versus how much the house is worth. All right, good question. So for anybody that has a conventional loan, if you are still paying PMI and you know you have 20% equity in that house, you should be reaching out to your lender to try to get rid of that PMI. Like I said, I've had buyers who did conventional. They're not paying PMI, especially if you bought during the pandemic. A lot of people got a lot of equity really quickly because prices were rising so fast. They were able to get rid of their PMI. Some lenders did say they had to wait 2 years in order to get rid of it, but most of them were able to get rid of it, at 2 years. I haven't had that problem when they're saying, oh, it's based on the purchase price and not the loan amount. All right. Amy's asking a question. I'm not taking individual clients for the rest of, probably not for 2024. I do have a referral program. So if you're looking for an agent, then you could have 2 links in the description of my videos where you can fill out something and I will refer an agent to you. But me personally, I do have some clients I'm working with. I have 2 that I'm trying to get their home sold before the end of the year. And one that's closing December 8th. But that's it. That's all I'm doing for 2023. And my goal is to not take new clients for 2024. It's just YouTube is a lot. I'm getting my courses out. And plus I do YouTube training for agents. So that's taking the majority of my time. So I'm not taking clients right now. But that was a good question, Amy. All right. So, and all those posts are in there. All right, Half and Half has a question saying, do you have a video on real estate investing outside of actually buying an investment property? Trying to figure out where to start. I don't have a video. I guess you're thinking about just like buying real estate investment trust, that sort of thing, where you're not buying property, but you're investing like in real estate stocks. That's what I think you're talking about, half and half, because you're not actually buying something. So I don't have a video on that specifically, but I recommend for real estate investing, because I'm not going to change my channel into like a real estate investing channel only. But Bigger Pockets, if you're not familiar with them, they're a real estate investment channel that has a lot of good information. But if you are just going to start investing in real estate investment trusts like stocks that give you fractional shares of real estate, then that's something you want to research and know what you're doing. Because a lot of times, if you're buying a house, you kind of know what that market is, how that neighborhood is. If you're renting it out, you know what you're charging for rent, all of that. You have more control over that when you are investing in some of the real estate REITs. That's what they call them. You don't have as much control as to what's happening. So they have different ones. They may have commercial REITs, they have single family REITs, that sort of thing. You really want to know, okay, which one is best for me to invest in. And anytime you're investing in things like that, it's for more the long term. It's not in or out, just like you would invest in, a real estate, buying actual property yourself. It's more for the long term. So you want to invest and try to just get your money back out. It's something you want to buy and hold over the longer term. But all of those REITs have their history of performance. So you can see and research and find out, like, how are they performing overall before you start investing in them. Yeah, so Intercessory says, thank you. It is a conventional. It's been 2 years. I'm going to reach out to the lender again because that didn't sound right to me either. The only thing that's coming to my mind, I know some lenders said, lenders can do things a little bit different, but yeah, in my experience, even with my own loan, it was based on how much I owed them and how much it was worth. But yeah, reach out again and find out exactly what they're talking about. All right. Tiro Wheezy. Hello. Our new build is on January 15th. Is done on January 15th. We gave $5,000 in earnest money. When would our first payment be? If we were $2,000 short for closing, what can we do? Will the builder work with us or help? Okay, so there's a couple of things you can do. Let me answer your first question first. This for everybody. When you buy a house, typically, more than likely, right, you're going to skip a month as far as payment. So when he closes on January 15th, he'll pay the interest from, for that month, from the 15th through the 31st. Does January have 31 days? He'll pay that interest at closing, but then there'll be no payment due in February. And then his first payment will be due in March. So you're going to skip a month, first payment due in March, and it's late by the 15th. Most mortgage lenders, your payment is late by the 15th. So your first payment should be in March. March 1st is due, but it's late by the 15th typically. Now, there's $2,000. So what you could do, you should have probably, I don't know if they've appraised it yet. If it's appraised for more, so say that you're buying a house for $300,000, but the appraisal is at $305,000. They could raise the price to $302,000 and give you $2,000 back as a credit. They could do that. They could increase their contribution. If it's new construction, they're probably offering you something anyway. You can ask to say, we're, $2,000 short. Can you increase you can just ask. All they can say is no. Can you increase your seller contribution to $2,000? You could also, so we can increase the sales price, and get a credit back as long as it appraises for that higher amount. You can just ask them to contribute more to your closing costs. You could also, you can get a gift from somebody outside of, maybe you or whoever's buying the house with you. You could ask for gift funds from somebody else. You could also, I'm trying to think of all the options that I would probably say. What else? Your lender can increase, you might not want to do this, but your lender can increase your interest rate and give you a credit of that $2,000. You can ask them about that. You can also, and agents are going to hate me for this, but your agent can rebate you possibly some of their commission so they can cover that $2,000 that you're short. But don't tell them I told you that. So those are the things that you probably can do to make sure you close. Good question. Agents, don't come for me in those comments. I'm just trying to get them closed. Would you rather have no money or some money if you have an agent? Yeah. All right. Good question. Let's see. How does one calculate net worth that includes a 30-year mortgage loan? People say a home is an asset, but if you don't own it outright, how is it calculated toward net worth? Good question. Okay, so when you're calculating your net worth, it's all of your assets minus all of your liabilities. So your home is an asset, or the equity in your home definitely is an asset. So if your home is worth $500,000, right? That would go on your asset side, $500,000. Say all you own is a house. So on your asset side, that would be $500,000, but you owe $200,000 on the house. That's your liability side. So you owe $200,000. So your net worth, if that's the only thing you own is that $500,000 minus that $200,000. So your net worth would be $300,000. Okay, so that's how people calculate their home in their net worth, even though you still owe on that property. And that's how net worth is calculated in general. It's assets minus liabilities. You add up everything you own and the value of that, and then you subtract all of your liabilities. Now, the problem is that real estate is not liquid. You can't just like, I'm gonna take, this $300,000 out and use it. You would have to sell your house in order to, realize that $300,000 of net worth. But if you're just doing, a calculation of your net worth, it could be $300,000, but it's not liquid. It's like you can't use it immediately, right? So, but that is your net worth. When somebody's calculating their net worth, it's all of their assets minus all of their liabilities. So a lot of times, how Dave Ramsey's like, these people are millionaires. A lot of times they're millionaires based on the equity in their home and how much their home is worth. It's not that they have $1 million in the bank. So it's your assets minus your liabilities. Good question, Kimmy. All right, Ruth, how can I save money to buy a home within a year? How much do I need to put away every week? Wanting to purchase a home in the $250,000 range. So Ruth, what I recommend is that you go ahead and get pre-approved and see if it's realistic for you to purchase a home within a year. Okay. So a couple of things. One, you go ahead and get pre-approved. Kevin is a lender. Kevin and I did a video that kind of went over like why you shouldn't wait to get pre-approved. Like you should do it before you're actually ready to buy. And because that kind of gives you a plan for the future. So you would go ahead and get pre-approved. They would tell you based on your current income, your debt, all of that, how much you would qualify for. And if it wasn't enough to be in that $250,000 range, you would have a plan to say, I got to pay down my debt to this. I have to get my credit score up. I have to save some more money. And the savings would be about 7%. So I recommend 7% of whatever your purchase price is. So that is $17,500 on, let me make sure that's right. 7% of 250,000 is around 17,500. So that's what I would recommend your goal to save. So it may not be that you can do that within a year. However, I also say look for any down payment assistance program. So if you know that you need to save 17,500, but there's a $10,000 down payment assistance program in your city or in your state, then you have to save $7,500. And then, that's your goal. And some people, depending on your income, can do that in a year. And some people that might be 2 years out for them. But you want to start now. If you're going to take that 1 month to say, okay, I'm going to focus on how I'm going to buy a house. It's not that I'm going to buy the house necessarily this year, but I'm going to have a plan in place to know, okay, this is how much I need saved. This is how much I need to pay down my debt in order to be approved to buy a house in that price range. And then, researching down payment assistance programs. So you're putting all that stuff together so you can make that happen. Good question, Ruth. Amy, I think we did link the referral sheet. So go ahead and do that. Fran says, should you be completely out of student loan debt before purchasing a home? I say no, and I know other people may say differently. And this is the reason why I say no, because a home is an appreciating asset. So you have about $28,000 in debt. You have to think to yourself, okay, if I buy a house now, because what happened over the pandemic was, say you had a lot of people that were kind of on the Dave Ramsey train, right? And not saying he's it's a bad plan, but sometimes you have to be able to move outside of a plan and not be so stuck on one way of doing things. So in his plan is get out of debt before you buy a house. But what happened to a lot of people in 2020 is that they were paying off their debt, they were getting a house, and they were going to buy a house. But what happened was the house that they could have bought in 2020 is now in 2023 40% higher, right, than the house that they could have bought in 2020. So home values went up 40%. Now your student loan debt your interest rate might be 5%. Okay. So if you went ahead and bought a house, it didn't necessarily say that you can't still pay off your student loan debt. If you bought a house, how much longer will it take you to pay off your student loan debt? Because really you're taking money that you would probably apply extra to those payments, and you're probably putting it toward your down payment, your closing costs, that sort of thing. So does it delay you a year? Does it delay you a year and a half? You don't have that much debt. So if you could pay off that debt in 1 year, go ahead and do that. Prices may not change that much, in a year. But a lot of people who are dealing with more debt, the delaying of it is not significant, in my opinion. So you can still do both. You can pay off your debt and be living in a house, especially if you are living in a house or paying rent or doing something like that. You can do both. So I think both are things that you should do. You should be getting out of debt. You should be, I want you to be, have a plan to purchase a house. You just have to figure out what makes sense. Like say right now you're paying $2,000 extra toward your student loans, and you're like, I'll be out of debt by the end of this year anyway, then I'm going to buy a house. That makes sense. But if you're like, it's going to take me 5 years to get out of debt, and then I'm going to buy a house in 2030 or something like that, who knows what prices of homes are going to be in 2030, because they're always moving. Typically, they're always moving up. So you have to just make a plan that makes sense for you, where you can achieve both in a reasonable amount of time. And home, if you ever listen to Dave Ramsey and his things, anytime people are getting out of debt, he usually never says sell your house and then pay off your debt. He always says, well, work it out, keep your house, because he knows that house is an appreciating asset. He says, save your house, and then go ahead and, have a debt plan. So it's the same thing, because if he didn't think your home was a good idea, right, to stay in it, he would say, sell your house, pay off your debt, and then, buy a house later. But he usually tells people, go ahead and keep your house, unless it's like an enormous like mortgage rate or an enormous part of their income. He says, keep your house and just pay off your debt. So have a plan for both. Good question. All right. So Son of a Shepherd, 2021, I bought a house for $235,000. Closing costs were $23,040. I hope that includes your down payment, because that closing cost seems really high for that house. All right. I heard to drop PMI, you have to be there for 10 years with 10% down. Do you think after 10 years they'll let me slide due to being off by a little? All right. So I'm assuming you have an FHA loan. So, and this for everybody, for FHA loans, in order to get rid of your PMI, you can't. There's only one way you can. One is paying off the loan, right? Or he's talking about if you put at least 10% down with an FHA loan, you can get rid of your mortgage insurance after 11 years. Okay. And he's saying because he was close to it, do you think they would let him slide? I don't think so. I think it's a hard and fast rule that you have to put down at least 10% in order to get rid of your PMI after 11 years. What's more likely to happen in your scenario is that you'll refinance into a conventional loan. Unless, well, let me say this, you probably have a really low interest rate, so it may not make sense to refinance. I don't think that there's wiggle room in that component of getting rid of your PMI. I think it's a hard and fast rule is that you have to be putting down 10% in order to get rid of the PMI. But I've never been asked that question. So I would ask your lender to see if that's the case. And it doesn't, if you put down 10%, that would have been $23,500. And you said your closing costs were $23,000. So your down payment was probably much less than that. So you're not even close to that. And with these numbers, it doesn't appear that you're close to that 10% yet. So let me clarify what I'm saying. I would ask, right, your lender to see if that's a possibility, if you have an FHA loan. If not, you may want to wait until it makes sense. Possibly. It may never make sense in your lifetime. I'm not sure, to refinance depending on what your interest rate is. If not, you're just going to go ahead and still pay the PMI unless you accelerate and pay off the house. And just know that as your loan value goes down and you pay it off, your mortgage insurance also goes down. It's a percentage of what your loan amount is. All right. Good question. All right. Thank you, guys. Hi, John says, is title insurance necessary? I think so. So title insurance, this for everybody, it's available on new construction and on resales. So title insurance is something that you purchase, and it is an additional fee. It varies by the price of the house, that protects you if there's any error in the chain of title. Because if, say, for a resale, you bought that house, but say 10 people own the house prior to you, and when they were transferring title from one group to the next group there was an issue. It could have been that there was a divorce and they still own the house, or it was a probate where somebody died and they gave it to somebody else, but they had another heir that they didn't think about. Anything that could happen during that process, you're protected from, typically. And you can ask the title insurance, like, what are the things that I'm protected? Sometimes they have boundary issues, like maybe your property boundaries. They may protect you from things like that as well. But you can ask the title insurance company, you can ask them, what does this protect me from? You can look at the policy to see what it protects you from. So I would say you're buying your most expensive asset, right? So depending on what you're paying for your house, the average home price is about $400,000 now. A title insurance policy may be $700, $500. And you have to buy one for the lender. As a buyer, you're buying a policy for yourself and you're buying one for the lender. Just the one for yourself, you can opt out of it and say, I don't want to be covered. But that lender is going to be covered regardless. So I say you should also cover yourself in the event something happens with the title, because if something does happen, you might be out their whole house, where you don't own that house anymore, depending on what the problem was. With new construction, is a little bit trickier. You're basically protecting, especially if they had just the land, you're protecting yourself from the title of the land that was bought from the builder. So the builder had to buy that land, and then they built those houses on the land. And there was some big case like some years ago where a builder bought some property, they built homes on it, and it come to find out the person that sold it to them didn't own it. It was like a step child or some other sibling that owned like 50% of it, so they didn't have the right to sell it. So there was a whole bunch of title issues with that. So that's the risk you can get into with new construction and title, because a lot of people waive it. They're like, oh, it's new construction, there's no title issues. But I say get it regardless. You're trying to protect your investment. The chances of something happening is pretty low, but you never know. So I say get it. All right. Good question. Hi, John. All right, Mrs. Hill. Hi, Ronald. I remember you from last week. Miss Hill, please explain buying down points and when it is necessary. Is it ever necessary? Let me think about it. Okay, so I'll explain what it is. I explained it in the last video too, but I'm explaining it again. I want to take a minute before I explain points really quickly. I'm going to go back up a little bit. For those of you that are just joining me, we're at 188. My first time homebuyer masterclass and confidently closed handbook, digital handbook is out. So I've updated it. I've already sold it. You can see all my reviews for it. If you are buying a house, you're in the market either now or you're going to be in the market in the future, you need to get this guide. I've gone through every single step of the process. I have sample contracts that I explain. I explain the buyer's brokerage agreement, when you should sign it, what you should ask, because too many people, like I'm getting my content from a lot of first-time home buyers that have made mistakes, and you can't go back. Once you bought that house is yours. So a lot of the things that you need to do on the front end to protect yourself, you need to go ahead and do it. So click on that link, get that guide, so you'll be a prepared first-time home buyer. So I wanted to say that. I'm going to hide that. I'm going to go back to Ronald's question. All right, Ronald, where are you? All right. So let's talk. So interest rates today are about, say, 7.4%. Interest rates are 7.4%. So when you are buying a house, what they call the par rate, PAR, is if you buy no points, it'll be 7.4%. Now it will vary by lender. So some lenders might be higher, some lenders may be lower. But when you are quoting with a lender, ask them if it's the par rate, PAR. Par rate means you're not buying any points, okay? So when they give you an estimate at the par rate, say it's 7.4, and say the payment for that is going to be, I'm just putting something out there, it's going to be $3,000. And based on your debt to income ratio, or maybe just you're not comfortable, you're like, I don't want to pay $3,000 a month. I want to pay $2,800 a month. And they're like, okay, we can do that. We can buy your interest rate down to a 7%, and maybe your payment's going to be $2,800. But that costs money. In order to buy your rate down or to buy points, it varies by lender, but it's usually per like quarter of a point is going to be, significant. Okay, so say that it costs you, I don't know, don't quote me on any of this. Say it costs you $9,000 to buy it down from 7.4 to 7%. Okay. You have to decide whether it makes sense. And I've done a video about this, about points. Does it make sense for you to pay $9,000 now for the eventual savings of that, between that 7.4 and that 7%? Because there's going to be a break-even point. Because if you're saving $200 a month, but you're paying $900 up front, that break-even point may not come until year 4 or year 5. So you have to make sure, number one, you're going to be in that house for at least that amount of time for you to break even. If you're not going to break even in a reasonable amount of time that you're going to be in that house, then you probably don't want to buy points, right? But if you know you're going to be there for a long time, then you may want to buy the points in order to get the lower interest rate. However, that $9,000 is going to be gone. So if you're like, I'm going to refinance in 2 years, you're not going to get that $9,000 back because you already paid for it. Does that make sense? So you have to say, okay, when's my break-even point? How much money am I saving by buying this rate down? How much money am I going to pay up front? So a lot of times when you're seeing these buy downs and these rates, you want the seller, you want the builder to be contributing that money to buy down your rate for you to, pay it down. Because if it's coming out of your pocket, it usually is less likely that it makes a lot of sense for you to do it. But I have how many videos do I have? I have 2 videos you should watch. I talked about the 2-1 buy down, that specifically. And then I talked about should you buy points and how points work, because those are conversations that you need to have with your lender up front. And so you know how they work, because what lenders do, in my experience, they just give you an estimate. They'll put the points in there already, and you're just thinking like, this is inexpensive, but you don't realize they're just wanting you to get a lower rate, because a lot of agents are saying, oh, I can get you a 6.5, but they're charging you to get that 6.5 in closing costs, and you don't realize you're paying all that interest up front to save every month. But at what point, again, do you break even with that amount? So watch those videos about points, and I kind of tell you how to approach the lender. You want to say, what's the par rate? How much am I paying in points? Like all of those things. So, and that things like that are in my masterclass and in my confidently closed handbook. So you'll know exactly how that stuff works. Good question, Ronald. All right, and I'm staying on till 7:15 because I started at 6:15, so we'll be on for a full hour. So I'll try to get to as many of you as possible, but ask your questions, okay? All right, I got a super chat that I want to take. All right, so Angel says, thank you for the super chat, Angel. Hello, I'm closing on November 24th. However, I changed brokers because it was charging me. Oh, we just talked about this. Okay. I changed brokers. When's the 24th? The 24th is Black Friday. It's the day after Thanksgiving. Okay. So I changed brokers because it was charging me $4,600 on points, and the new lender will save that. It's the same lender. It's the same lender, Rocket. Did I make a mistake by switching? Okay. You said when you say you change brokers, you mean like agents? Okay. This is kind of, Angel, you're going to have to put something. You don't have to put a super chat in there anymore, but you have to clarify. When you say you change brokers, does that mean you change lenders? Because you're saying it's the same lender, Rocket. Did I make a mistake by switching? I would say no, you didn't make a mistake by switching. And let me say this while you're clarifying this in the chat, that if mortgage rates, you can switch your lender at any time. Okay. You can switch your lender. A lender can't say, well, you say you were working with me. It's going to be a penalty if you don't close with me. There's no penalty by law. There's no penalty that a lender can assess to you by switching lenders. Okay. The only thing that you may lose is that if you paid for your appraisal up front, or if you paid for anything up front, you may lose those funds. But if you want to switch a lender, you can just go ahead and say, I'm not using you anymore. I'm using this person. Okay. They just don't have to refund necessarily your money. Unless you're using an FHA, like you did an FHA appraisal, that appraisal will transfer to your new lender. However, lender number 2 that you switch to, you need to make sure, particularly with new construction resales that might have penalties for you not meeting the closing date, you need to make sure lender number 2 can close you on time. Because if they can't close you on time and you're in default and the seller or the builder terminates on you, you may be out of your earnest money. And if your earnest money is significant, so say you had $10,000 in earnest money, and they're like, if this doesn't close on the 24th, we're terminating this and you're going to lose your earnest money, then it wasn't worth it, right? Because you're losing $10,000 for $4,600. You have to make sure that that second lender can close you on time. That's my main thing. If somebody wants to switch, you're fine to switch. You're switching for a better fees. You're switching for a better interest rate, whatever you're switching for. But just make sure that that second lender can close you on time, so you're not going to be penalized for closing later. If you're not sure, see if you can get an amendment with the seller for them to to push back or to get a later closing date. So if I was going to switch lenders, I would try at first to go to the seller and say, hey, I need to switch lenders. This other lender is offering me a much lower rate. I want to go with them. Instead of closing on the 24th, I need to close on the 30th. If they sign an amendment saying that that's okay, then you're safe and you could, you have more time. But, that could be something that you put in place to make sure you're covered and you don't lose your money. All right. Thank you for that question. I'll look to see if you clarified it at all, or if that answered your question, then hopefully that works for you. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. I think I answered that question. Sorry, you guys, I have to find back where I was. Okay. Diana Johnson says, "Hey Shahida, thanks for the great advice. We closed on our property last week, so we'll be moving in the next 2 weeks, doing some personalized touch to the space." Congratulations, Diana. I've been seeing you on the channel for a while, so I'm really excited for you. Congratulations. All right, so I think I'm back where I am. I'm back with title insurance. Hey, Kamal, how are you? Good to see you on the chat. I know you closed a while ago too. I'm mirroring what you're doing in your picture. All right. Okay, back on track. Coralicia Bryant, is it better to buy a house or a condo? I do live in California. So, okay. I think, and this is my opinion, but it does depend on where you live, because California has less land. It's usually more populated than most places. Okay, I think hopefully you guys can see me, because I feel like my signal went out. Okay, which I said I was hardwired. So hopefully you can see me, Corlicia. All right, I like single family because you have more autonomy, right? I don't have to worry about, generally speaking, I don't have to worry about the other neighbors, and there's more common areas. There's more common areas that I need to worry about having maybe a special assessment or something that we need to cover. So when the roof needs to get done, are the HOA fees going to cover it that I'm paying every month? Or is my neighbor not paying their HOA fees, and I'm going to have to cover or put more money out to cover what they haven't been paying? Because sometimes in some communities, you have some people that stop paying. They might have paid off their house. They're not paying it, with their mortgage, that sort of thing. And they just stop paying those extra fees. Maybe they can't afford it or whatever. And then, you guys as a community don't have enough money to maintain the common areas. And the common areas can be like the elevator. It could be the park, the pool, the workout room, the roof, whatever whatever the common areas are in your area. And so those assessments are always going to be usually something that you have to make sure going in, there's enough money on reserve. They have enough money that everybody pretty much is paying their assessments. You have to be more cautious when you're going with a condo that those things are taken care of, because when you buy a single family home, you don't have usually any common areas unless you have amenities. Your property itself doesn't have any common areas. You're responsible for your land and your property, the land that your house sits on. So you don't have to worry as much about, your neighbors and covering those common areas. So I do have a video. However, I am aware places like Florida, New York, New Jersey, California, highly populated areas, in order to get something affordable, you have to put condos in the mix. That's much more common in a lot of those areas. So I do have a video of, condo owners beware. It's about 5 things before you buy a condo that you need to make sure you look at ahead of time, to make sure, because there can be, and I had a post on my channel last week saying that there was going to be a $13,000 special assessment, meaning each homeowner in the condo has to pay an additional $13,000 to cover repairs or renovations or that sort of thing. If you're not prepared for that, right, that's a major expense that you wouldn't typically have if you had a single family home. Okay, but the price in your area, the price of a condo may be so much substantially lower, it might be worth it. Where, as far as affordability, condos would work much better for you. All right, hopefully that helps, Corlicia. Thank you so much. Seeking Truth, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. Tiro, builders offering us home insurance through the insurance they go through. What is a fair price for home insurance? They're quoting us money. We're in California. Okay. There's no way for me to let you know what's fair. The best way to know that you're getting a fair quote is to get multiple of them. So you don't need to just quote with their insurance. You need to quote with at least 2 other insurance companies. So I usually say quote with your car insurance because you usually can get a multi-policy discount, right? Quote with them, quote with who your lender recommends, because your lender is usually estimating what your insurance should be. So they're taking that estimate from somewhere. You can ask your lender to recommend a home insurance company, and then you can ask your agent to recommend a home insurance company. So those are at least 3 that you can begin with to see if they're all in about the same range and how much they're charging you. So that I would do that, but there's no way I can tell you what is reasonable for that area. Okay, but get 3 quotes. All right, I'm going to try to get, I know some people are asking some other questions. I'm going to try to get some people that haven't had their questions answered at all. Because Tiro and hi, John, you're asking a lot in here. All right, Marcus, do they add tax payments plan to DTI if you have a payment arrangement set up? Good question. The answer is yes. Okay. So, but what you have to be mindful of, if you have, what he's saying is if you owe the IRS, a lot of times the IRS will allow you to get on a payment plan to pay them back. Okay. Now, what you have to be mindful of if you're buying a house and you're on a payment plan is the lender at the pre-approval stage typically does not see that you're on a payment plan, because the IRS, generally speaking, does not report that payment to your credit bureaus. So when they pull your credit, trying to see all of your debts, a lot of times lenders don't see that you have a payment plan to the IRS. And typically they don't see it until you are in underwriting. If you don't know what underwriting is, basically how you go from pre-approved to approved. They look at everything a little bit closer, right? And watch my underwriting video. So they're taking you from pre-approved to approved. And that's when they see, oh, hey, you owe the IRS. Are you on a payment plan? Oh, you are. Okay. We're going to add that payment to your DTI. And depending on how tight your DTI ratio is, that can very easily have you not approved for that house. So this is something, if you're on a payment plan, this is for everybody. If you're on a payment plan, go ahead and tell your lender up front, this is my payment plan, this is how much I pay every month. So they can calculate that payment plan, that payment into your DTI ratio up front. Because if you wait for them to figure it out once you're already typically under contract, that's how a lot of contracts get denied. I say there's 2 things that stop you from, that I've seen in underwriting, that stops people from buying a home the most after they've been pre-approved. It's the IRS and child support, because both of those things typically don't show up. They show up in underwriting. Oh, you pay this much for child support, or you have behind your back child support, and then they put that in there, or the IRS, because they didn't see those things initially. So that's my answer for that. All right, good question. All right, okay. Do me a favor, everyone, because we still have about 5 more minutes. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. If you're new here, go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. I try to do these. I took a little bit of a break, August, September, but I'm back. So August, September, and October, actually. I didn't do as many lives, but I'm going to try to go live, with the exception of Thanksgiving break. I'm going to try to go live at least once a week, because I know a lot of people are under contract going into the end of the year. And then by January, you guys are ready to buy again for the new year. So go ahead and make sure you are subscribed. Hit that button for me. Let me go back to my comments. I have to get the banner out first. Okay, yeah. Thank you guys so much. All right. So, and thank you so much. My moderator is putting in a lot of the videos that I'm talking about. She's putting in there. So if you haven't already, just make sure you're copy and pasting those so you can watch them later. Okay, Angel's back. I said I changed agent from broker A to broker B, but it's Rocket Mortgage, and they will keep the same appraisal. I would say yes. I'm not sure why you had to change if they're both Rocket Mortgage, right? I don't understand that part of it, but just make sure that the agent, the broker, can get you closed on time. If they can't, if they know they can't, because they have an idea of how long everything's going to take, then you need to go back to your seller and try to get an amendment to increase the closing date, to get a later closing date. That's what I would be doing now, so you're not as stressed to see if this is going to work out by the 24th. All right, thank you. All right. Thank you, guys. All right, let's see. Jonas says, can you explain why technically we weren't raised to see a living home as a liability to avoid in comparison to a rental building, a duplex, triplex, as an asset, which is way better? I think I've done a video about, I named it Single Family Fools to get you guys attention, but I think it's definitely a choice, right? Do you want to, like, if I had a choice, I'm not trying to live, at least even for a year, in a duplex next to my tenant. That's something that I wouldn't do right now. Would I have done it in my 20s? Probably, right? So if your first home is going to be multifamily, right, then you can get a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, and live in that, at least one of them, for at least 1 year. And you could rent out the entire thing after that 1 year. And this is what he's alluding to. You don't have to buy a single family home, and typically you will get pre-approved for more if you're buying multifamily, because they're going to calculate that rent as income. So I do have a video about should you buy a multifamily home versus a single family home. But I also think you have to make that decision. And sometimes it's a lifestyle decision as well. Do you want to live, in this instance, do you want to live there? Do you want to be a landlord? Do you, and then a lot of places, like, it depends on where you live. Chicago, New York, California, a lot of those places have a lot of multifamily housing. A lot of places in the South do not have a lot of multifamily housing. So you may be waiting, depending on the market, for this, multifamily house to come on the market. And they're not sometimes in the nicest areas. At least in Atlanta, a lot of multifamily homes are not in the best areas. That's if you're going to live there. But if you are not going to live there, it's just like buying a regular investment property. You're going to put 20% down. You rent out the entire multifamily unit, and you can make money. So I just see it as, one is kind of the house hacking. You move in one, then you rent out the rest. That is a good idea, but it doesn't work for everybody, depending on where you live, what stage of life you're in. Do you have children? Do you not have children? All of those things have to be factored in if you're going to do this. But I did kind of explain it. I did explain it in my single family versus multifamily video. I hope that answers your question, Jonas. I don't think that we weren't raised necessarily like that, but I think a lot of people didn't even know that was an option for them to get a multifamily house the first time. I didn't know it was an option. I bought my first house at 23. And if I knew that was an option, that probably would have been a better time in my life to do something like that. So I think it wasn't that we're not raised. The people that raised us, in order to teach us that, would have to have been knowledgeable about it themselves. So, but now that we have the internet, we have YouTube, now a lot of people are more knowledgeable. So this is something that I would tell my children to do if they were buying their first house versus just buying a single family home, if it was available to them. All right. I hope that clears that up, but watch that video. The moderator may find it and put it in the chat. All right. Thank you. Okay, I'm not going to be specific to any neighborhoods since this is a national channel, but it says my lender is charging me 2 points to get down to 6.75. I'm closing on 12.5. And I'm assuming that you're paying the points versus the seller paying the points. You want to look at that to see if that makes sense as far as your buy down and how much you're being charged for that. It's all about that break even point. So that my moderator has put those videos about whether you should pay for points, that sort of thing. Because it might make you feel good, right? That your payment is lower at that 6.75, but you're paying for that. And does it make sense for you to pay that now or just take the higher payment every month? You have to see what makes the most sense. All right. Let me see. I'm trying to get to as many other questions as possible. Okay, she did post the condo buyers beware. If anybody's thinking about buying a condo, you should definitely be watching. You should definitely be watching that video. Okay, what else? And if there are any Atlanta people on here, because I'm looking at some of the conversations, my email is info@shahidahill.com. So info@shahidahill.com. I might be able to answer some of those specific questions. Hey, Edith, first time catching you live from Georgia. Hi, how are you? All right, Dorothy says, I'm going to take 5 more questions because we're getting a little bit past it. Oh, we might be good. I'm toward the end. All right. When would be a good time to purchase another home? I sold my home and paid off my credit card and my vehicle. I rent with a family member paying very minimal rent when you can afford to do so. So a lot of people, I don't know when you sold your home, but a lot of people sold their home over the pandemic because they had, the home had increased so much in value. They sold their home, they used that equity, they got out of debt like you did. They might have, you bought a car, so you probably, hopefully you're debt free at this point, and then you're ready to get back in the market for a house. But what you'll find on the other side of it, hey, interest rates are 7%, home prices are higher. So how much of your income is going to be going toward that house? I'm in the, I've done videos, no more than 35% of your take home pay. So if you can, 25% or 35%, pretty conservative of your take home pay, not your gross, that you want to try to stay in between. If you can do that with your salary, with your current income at these mortgage rates and at these home prices, you can be in the market because over time you'll be fine. But if it's going to take more of your income, 50% of your income or your take home pay or more, then that's something you probably don't want to do right now. So that was my latest video, is maybe you shouldn't be buying a house, right? Because most people, not most people, but a lot of people, it could be most, if it's over 50%, their incomes don't support the current housing market, the prices and the interest rates. So if you truly are going to be a lot outside of that 35% maximum, then you should be waiting. You should, while you're paying very minimal rent, save your money as much as possible so you can, when it's time for you to get in the market, you're ready. And I have a video coming out this month about a mortgage calculator that's going to tell you whether you should keep on renting or whether you should buy. All right. Thank you guys. Trying to see. Okay, I think everybody. Okay, I think you guys are talking amongst yourself. He said the standard deduction. We're talking about, a lot of people were talking about, like, is it a tax advantage to own a property? And I think what Miss Too Beloved is saying that back in the day, right? And not that long ago, probably like 3, 4, 5 years ago, the standard deduction, the mortgage interest deduction was high. You could deduct all your interest, that sort of thing, because the standard deduction that the IRS was offering wasn't that as high. Now it really makes sense for a lot of people just to do the standard deduction instead of doing the mortgage interest deduction. It just depends, especially with your at interest rates at this level, you're not going to have as much interest to deduct. So there's not as much of a tax advantage, at least for a single, your primary residence, as it is if maybe you had an investment property, you had a business, that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that you kind of talk that over with your lender ahead of time. All right, so all the videos are in here. I want to emphasize again that you guys need to get my master class. So you're not, because these things are good, but you're piecing it together. So the master class takes you from first step to the last step, like I'm with you at every step of the way. And it has videos, it has examples, it has everything. So I want everybody to have a happy Thanksgiving. I'm not live next week, but I'll be live again after Thanksgiving, the Thursday after Thanksgiving. Thank you so much. You guys have a great night.